Matthew, welcome to the Boneyard podcast. How's it going, my friend?
Hey guys, it's going well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what got mixed up in that email. I guess one of our links got mixed up. I don't know. So apologies for that. Thank you for working with us and coming on. Uh, how's everything going down there in Houston?
Yeah, we're here now. That's what matters.
That that's for sure. Matthew, just gonna come off the hop. I mean, JT Daniels goes down last week. Looks honestly pretty bad at one point. Guy's been everywhere. What's going on with JT? Is he going to be able to play this weekend?
Well, that's the $1 million question, right? As of right now, we went through um, some optimism that he potentially might have been able to go back in on Saturday against USF. Coaching staff decided to hold him out. Didn't participate in practice during the week so far, but talked to Bloomgren today, and he still said he's pretty confident that he's going to be able to go and is going to give it a good shot. I think, honestly, you're talking about a guy who this is his chance that he's been waiting for, bounced around and has gotten a starting job and is doing pretty well. If he can go, he's going to try, even if that's on one leg. And honestly, from what we've seen so far, JT Daniels on one leg might be better than most quarterbacks in the country.
Yeah, and Matthew, kind of continuing on JT Daniels, right? I mean, this is a journeyman quarterback. I mean, he's a guy that's been everywhere. It feels like he's been playing college football for 30 years at this point. But why Rice? Why do you guys believe he made that decision to come to Rice and want to finish his collegiate career out?
I mean, it's really simple. Mike Bloomgren recruited him when he was in the 8th grade in California. So the relationship between coach and quarterback has gone on for a dozen years, something like that. At this point, Bloomgren was first to offer him. That was Bloomgren's first offer of the class when he was at Stanford. And every time JT Daniels has entered the portal since, Bloomgren has been one of the first calls. So when he left USC to Georgia, Georgia to West Virginia into the portal again, Bloomgren met up with him and gave his pitch one more time. And finally, it made sense and it matched up. So had it not been for Mike Bloomgren and that relationship, he would not be at Rice. And because of that, Rice fans, and from what people have seen so far, got a pretty exceptional quarterback at a place that usually doesn't get those of quite this caliber.
Now, it looks like Rice, I mean, fairly pass-heavy offense. I believe still averaging, 80 yards per game on the ground. Tell us a little bit about how we'll see this offense kind of come out on Saturday.
Well, that's been kind of the opposite of where things have been. So we're still kind of feeling out what this offense looks like pre-JT. This was a team that was really committed to running the ball, and they still want to. It just hasn't been very effective this year. So they said, okay, if we can't run, we'll throw. So I think that's going to depend on what we see from JT, how able he is, how much he can go. If he is in and all things are firing like normal, I think you'll see a very pass-happy offense again. But I do think, they'll probably have to see a couple things, because even though Bloomgren has said we're okay, leaning to the air if we have to, a former O-line coach wants to be able to run the ball. So you're going to have to see some creativity, a couple things thrown in there to get the running game going. So yeah, I think it'll be pass heavy, especially if JT's out there, and you'll try and see where they can mix in enough run to hopefully keep the defense honest.
And Matthew, talking about this Rice program as a whole, right? I mean, this is obviously a program that is trying to build something, trying to get better. In years past, this is not a program that a lot of teams have been scared to play against. It's not a, kind of a program that do you think circle a win against maybe? But it doesn't feel like that anymore, right? This Rice program kind of feels like it's kind of taking a turn, turning a new leaf, turning a new page. Is that just Bloomgren and what he's brought to this program, or is something going on? And how do you feel about this Rice program going forward?
Well, I mean, first off, if y'all told me circle your calendars, September 28th, the only AAC team with a Power 5 win would be Rice. I'm guessing not many people would have had that on their bingo cards. So that's a surprise for some. I guess everybody outside of the Patterson Center at Rice. It's been interesting with Bloomgren since he's got here, since he has now signed three of his past four classes have been the highest rated recruiting class in program history. So the talent on this roster is quite literally better than it's been, at least in the recruiting era. Rice had some really good teams back in the day, but recruiting era, at least it's a talented roster. You got a talented quarterback, and they've progressively built from 1, 2, 3, 5 wins last year in a bowl trip. So it's the progression has been incremental. It's been slow. It's been frustrating at times, but getting the Houston win and just having JT, everything kind of working well with the offense, it kind of feels like the program is kind of taking that next step. And you're right. The team that was the doormat at least is now going to be competitive in every game they play in a conference that's at a higher level than they've been at in quite some time.
For sure. And talking about like this team, the recruiting classes, tell me, so what's the biggest strength of this team? And then on the flip side, what would you say is like the biggest weakness of this Rice Owl team?
I mean, from a talent perspective, it's pretty lined up with what we've seen so far this season, right? The passing game with JT Daniels and Luke McCaffrey, that connection. McCaffrey, even after JT went out and into the third quarter last week, finished with 199 receiving yards and is just racking up yards and touchdowns and, a couple highlight reel plays a week. So that's really special. Those two kind of are the straw that stirs the drink on offense. On defense, the strength is definitely the defensive line in the pass rush with what we've seen so far. Josh Piercy, Coleman Coco, DeBraylon Carroll, Isaiah Floyd, Blake Banish. They just have so many guys that they can rotate in there and can be effective and get to the quarterback. The downside is, as we saw last week against USF, when you don't get to the quarterback, the secondary has had some concerns and they kind of been exposed at times, granted by a couple of talented offense as well. So on the whole, I think a lot of things to be pretty happy about.
Yeah. And, this matchup kind of feels like, a pretty good offense in Rice going up against a pretty good defense in ECU. What are some things offensively that Rice could do to kind of frustrate a pretty good front seven that ECU is bringing to Houston?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting because one of the things that Daniels has been so good at so far is playing the quarterback position, and to the point where, stepping up in the pocket, showing enough mobility in the pocket to extend plays and find guys downfield, whether it's him or if they bring somebody else in. I think the ability to extend that play and test an ECU secondary, that's been up and down, probably fair to say, so far this season. I think that's kind of where it's going to be, because if the running game doesn't get going, they'd love that to happen. You're going to have a quarterback make plays, and sometimes that's the difference.
For sure. Yeah. And just want to kind of talk about, Coach Holmgren is on, or Bloomgren. Sorry, I don't know where Holmgren came from.
I was about to say that's a different guy.
Coach, hey, I was saying earlier, I have a 5-month-old daughter, not getting much sleep.
You got that brain right now.
I think that's the second time I've messed up today, and both times I think I caught myself first time. But Bloomgren, in his 6th season, former offensive line coach, came from Florida State, or went to Florida State in college. Tell us a little bit about him, kind of his story.
I mean, he was the OC and the brains behind the Stanford offense under Andrew Luck, and he produced, all those great running backs that, have made Stanford famous at this point. You got Christian McCaffrey and Bryce Love and Toby Gerhart. I mean, the list goes on and on. All these guys that, had a pretty good run in the league. So that's kind of where he cut his chops, got the job at Rice. And what I think is really interesting about Bloomgren is something that I don't think we see in modern college football nowadays, because he got hired and he has not had a 500 record yet. And he's still here at Rice. He's been given patience to build a program. And through that process, we've kind of seen him grow and develop and learn and pivot to the point where, you know, a run heavy team becomes a pass heavy team, and he's kind of built the talent around him. So I think what's most interesting about him is kind of maybe a countercultural move in the sport today is like, hey, if you give a guy time, if you give a guy resources, what can happen? And that's why I think this year is so interesting to watch. That, yeah, it took a while to get here, but if he can get things going, then, you know, maybe it was worth it.
You know, Matthew, I kind of want to ask you a fun question here, because we were talking about this earlier, but I want to ask you about the unis that Rice is kind of wearing this weekend, because it kind of feels like a really good matchup of uniforms. ECU's kind of going with their classic uniforms, and Rice is, you know, doing the throwback to the Oilers. So kind of what went into that and why they want to do it this week against ECU coming in Houston.
So I know that this was in the works for quite a while, and I know actually Rice and Houston were both talking about this going into the offseason. And so Houston had their shot. They did it. I believe they wore them week 2. I don't remember which game that was that they did it. And then Rice gets their turn. And, you know, with the victory over Houston, I guess claims the right to wear the powder blues. So people are pretty excited about that. And yeah, I mean, ECU's, man, the purple, they got some great uniforms. So I'm all for it. I think it's going to be a fun one this week. And Rice has kind of stuck pretty close to home on some of their uniforms, but the past couple of years they've had a good one here and there. Their space one last year was fantastic, and the baby blues this year looks great too. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I could sit and talk uniforms all day long. Let me ask you, and you can say I don't want to answer that. Who would you say has the worst uniforms in the conference? I think I have my opinion.
Oh, in the conference, let's see. I gotta familiarize. Who else is on the docket now?
You could say like a Temple.
I'm looking at the list here.
I was thinking Temple.
The Temple color, it's kind of rough. I don't know if I'm on that. Charlotte's, I'm not. The gold and green, it doesn't work for me.
Tulsa,
at least like the lighter green, like UAB with the darker green, that kind of works. Tulsa, we just got a lot of red and blue. Actually, that's the problem. Maybe it's just so much red and blue.
It's the gold helmets that I hate. They're gold helmets that Tulsa rocks.
Tulsa?
I don't know. Just
I could go. If I'm going to be honest, I don't like tiger stripes. So the Memphis blue with the shoulders,
okay.
I'm out.
I don't like their helmets.
Feels kind of gimmicky.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. I'm still Temple.
There you go, Memphis.
This is very bland.
I'm going to go Tulsa. I'm going Tulsa. I've always thought that they just look like a high school team out there. They used to run out that quarterback, Goldilocks. The guy had Goldilocks. I don't know his actual name. Felt like he was there for 15 years at Tulsa. So
it's probably better that way.
Yeah. So I know that there's going to be a decent contingent of Pirates. There's already a decent contingent of Pirates in Houston. I feel like a lot of people are traveling down to Houston this weekend. Any recommendations for any of our listeners that may be coming to Houston?
I mean, one of the nice things about Rice and where it's located and being in Houston is you're already so close to everything. So my recommendation is, I mean, you can a couple blocks from the stadium, walk over, explore Rice Village. You got all your shops and places to eat. You can go get your local joints. You can go get your chains restaurants, get you a Hop Dottie, some tacos. I'm sure there's some folks from the Carolinas that could go for some tacos. So there's a lot over there right by campus. So you can't go wrong. Check out that place. Absolutely. I guess we got a late game. So go grab lunch and then walk over.
For sure. And I mean, we all know that, Rice is a top university in the country when it comes to academics. What's the tailgate scene? Anything like that going on before the game?
They've actually kind of amped it up. I think this is one of the cooler things that they've started doing with the move to the American. They have a tailgate owlie. Yes, pun off the owl, right behind the stadium. I know you cringe a little bit, but then you just embrace it. It's good. So they'll have some live music going on right behind the stadium. that you can go ahead and check and listen to. I believe it's a craft beer festival this weekend, which you can't go wrong with. So right by the stadium, they'll take care of it. You'll be all right.
For sure. Artie, any other questions? Anything else that you feel like we need to talk about?
I didn't have any other questions.
Can I jump on y'all? I want to get kind of your perspective, because as I know you all been living in an ECU world for a while. What's kind of the thoughts on where this matchup is with Rice? Because I think it's pretty interesting. You got a new team, not a historic power, kind of looks like they're punching above their belt, and then you got ECU sitting at 1-3. Kind of what's at stake for the Pirates in this game? What are the temperature on each side?
We were actually just talking about this before you hopped on it. It's one of those things where ECU fans are not happy right now. A lot of fans are feeling pretty down in the dumps, and rightfully so. The offense has been abysmal at times, and this is, I mean, you got to remember this is a program that 10 years ago we had Shane Carden and Justin Hardy slinging it all over the place under Lincoln Riley, right? So you think about that, and you think about, okay, well, what are we doing here? When go through 3 games, I think ECU had 3 offensive touchdowns and 2 defensive touchdowns in the first 3 games. So this isn't an ECU style team that most Pirates are used to watching. Yeah, I mean, a lot of Pirate fans are looking at this and saying this is a must win. And that's nothing against.
I know, it's interesting.
Rice.
I've heard similar things from the Rice contingent. A lot of pressure on a Week 5 game.
Yeah, this is honestly, I haven't looked at the full slate for the American, but I mean, overall, this might be the game of the weekend in the American Conference, just because you got 2 teams that are going to fight it out, and I think the confidence boost from last week may help out ECU a little bit. You got 2 fairly inexperienced quarterbacks. You got a fairly kind of put together front or offensive line, which, I mean, the offensive line is not that great for ECU. So overall, it's like they got to figure it out, and everybody wants them to figure out sooner rather than later.
Next week.
Yeah. Now, it's absolutely a must win for ECU in this game. When you put yourself on 8-ball 0-3, and your only win right now is against an FCS opponent, and you have an issue that Rice doesn't have, which is a quarterback issue, which is what we still have currently, that we're still trying to figure out, is absolutely a must win. So 2-3, you feel a whole lot better leaving Houston at 2-3 than you do 1-4, and you're almost packing in the season. So it's absolutely a must win for ECU this weekend.
Now, one question that I didn't ask you, and that I like to typically ask, is from an outsider's perspective. East Carolina University, we all think that, hey, we want something more than what we've got. What's an outsider's perspective of ECU?
I think it's just it. When I think about ECU, I think back to the old Conference USA days and the Lincoln Riley, those high flying offenses, the points, things like that. That's just kind of what I hearken to. That's actually one of the interesting things about Rice moving to the American, is everyone's excited when you make the jump up, right, in conference realignment and you don't get left behind. But for Rice fans, it's the fact that, like, hey, we get to go play all these programs, like SMU for a year, maybe, but Navy and East Carolina, and these programs that were in Conference USA or with the WAC or had some familiarity. So getting to see ECU on the schedule, I know Rice fans were pretty excited about it. It's good to have that game back.
Yeah,
for the uniforms, if nothing else.
Facts.
Gotta love it. Matthew, thank you again for joining us on the Boneyard podcast. Sorry that there was some technical difficulties on our end, but go ahead and plug where everybody can find you and the Roost.
Yeah, at theroost.com. We're on all social media, whatever we're calling Twitter, X these days, whatever that is. So we'll be there recapping the game, talking about it. We'll had a live stream up on YouTube as well, so you can find us anywhere And, we're excited. Thanks for having us on. And we're ready for hopefully a good football game this weekend.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure. Looking forward to it. Yeah, really excited to have this matchup and good luck going forward after this weekend.
Sweet. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it, Matthew. Thank you.